So talking about pilots, and especially talking about CJI, just in a nutshell, I'd like to share with you a couple of bullet points. So we're a global leading manufacturer of simulator and training services. So we act on more than 50 training centers across the world with more than 250 simulators. So business jet simulators, we have helicopter jets as well, simulators, and commercial aviation. So this is a couple of information I'd like to share here, especially related to the American market and to the European and Middle Eastern market here. This is a figure which is taking the last 5 years utilization rate for business jets. As you can see, the growth is there. The growth is not impressive, but at least the growth is sustained. So we can easily see that between the American and the European territory, and this is facts from the FAA and EASA Eurocontrol, we've been having a 1 digit, but still a kind of improvement within the aircraft business jet utilization. In terms of deliveries, especially jet hours, we like to forecast and to have witnessed that over the last 5 years, each and every aircraft that got monitored was achieving something around 330 hours a year. So what all does that mean? Is that pilots were actually flying these aircrafts, so pilots were actually getting trained. And in the next slides, we're going to go more deeper into the details when it comes to training. In terms of deliveries, there is a net average of 690 aircraft delivered every year across the last 5 years. The part fleet, and I think a comment has been made this morning, the grounded fleet, so the available pre-owned aircraft market has decreased, but in profit for the new aircraft, so minus 5.7% increase, all the way up to 3.7% increase to reach a number of 22,000 active aircraft with active pilots. And obviously we're going to see it as well later on, but the large jet market has been one of the main driver of this trend. So this is now a forecast for the next 10 years. So we see the compound average growth rate is actually higher on the big jets and smaller on the smaller ones. So we see the trend going from the Americas, which is known for being, I would say, the motherland for the business jets, the no jet, no business. So the small aircraft popping from one city to the other is now moving toward a larger cabins, toward new regions such as the Middle East and Asia, where the demand for bigger cabins and longer range is higher than anywhere else in the world. So we like to say that the business jets, the bigger ones, are driving the overall demand. So now between this year and in 10 years, we are expecting to see delivered a little bit less than 5,000 aircraft. So now what does it mean? The crew ratio, so the aircraft goes to 3 different entities. So we have flight department. So what is a flight department? So it's like a company who generates a big group, of course, who can afford the expenditure of a big aircraft, who has his own department and only flies his execs or his clients or the company members. Then on the second part, we have the charter and the fractional operator. So the charter, I think we have a couple of them here today. So just to name a few of them, my predecessors on the stage, DC Aviation, for example. And then you have the very private flight operators, the Part 91. So it's a jet which is owned by one individual and who basically is supposed to fly only for his own. So of course the average of pilot per entity varies a little bit. So from 2 pilots required to operate the aircraft on the private flight side, you can go up to 3.9, so basically 4 pilots on the charter side, and 2.7. Why is it higher on the charter side? Just to make sure that the aircraft utilization rate is kept at its higher level. So when you take these new aircraft deliveries and you multiply it by the average of the 3 ratios, you can end up to an approximate number of 11,000 pilots, new pilots, that needs to be trained, qualified, and graduated to absorb that new demand on top of the existing pilots, which we're going to tackle on the next slide. So new pilot demand, active fleet growth, so the 5,000 figure we discussed about before, multiplied by the crew ratio, plus attrition. So the attrition is a parameter that's going to affect the level of utilization and availability of the pilots. Retirement, the pilot that moves actually from one type of operation to another can happen. You can go from a business jet world all the way to an airline world. You can fly helicopters overnight. So this is attrition that we have to take into account. So this is the retirement attrition we have here out of the US, for example. So we have 4% of pilots that retire a year, which is an equivalent of 20,000 pilots that needs to be replaced because the growth of the fleet worldwide keeps on growing. And then the movement to the airline world represents more or less the same ratio of 4%. So together we end up with a total of 40,000 pilots, that needs to be trained, that needs to be replaced by a new pilot that needs to be trained. So here, this is the distribution of these 50 new pilots that needs to be trained over the next 10 years per area. So we like to say that around 36,000 people needs to be trained in America. Europe and Middle East is carrying on the second rank, 11,000, and then you have Asia, which is nowadays quite a boom. So all together, we should come up with a total number of 65,000 pilots in the year 2028. Now, in terms of training, what does it represent? Every year, and this is across the world, and yeah, it is true that some authorities are more, I would say, strict than some others, but on a nutshell, at the end of each and every NCA, everybody requires a pilot to be trained and to pass by a similar part every year, whether for recurrence, LPC, which is a license check, or whether for an OPC, which is an upgrader check that needs to be performed on the simulator. So if you take, for example, an average of 60,000 pilots to be trained, that gives you 71,000 recurrent events, which is again mandatory if you want to keep your license current, or 15,500 pilots to be initial trained. So an initial training is a kind of a 1 month training, which is 50% spent on the classroom and 50% spent on the simulator. That gives you the right upon success, success rate on your exam, whether on the ground school or on the simulator, to then fly the aircraft. But before, of course, you have already attended a kind of ATPL and CPL, and you have your multi-engine license and your instrument rating license already up and running and stamped on your rights, and you need to have as well some existing flying hours. So this is slightly different than the commercial environment. Why? It's just because when you have whether an individual or a company that buys a business jet, he likes to have a kind of quite experienced people flying the aircraft. The gentleman, even though talented, has a couple of 100 hours on the single engine piston, with all due respect to single engine piston flyers, cannot jump on a Bombardier that's so Gulfstream aircraft the next day and fly a guy that just spent a couple of millions in his jet. So per year we are expecting to have 2.1 million training hours spent on the ground and another 2.1 million training hours spent on the sim. What I mean by sim is, those big boxes that we plug on those big hydraulical system or electrical system that moves left and right and that's duplicate and modelize all the reaction of the aircraft. is they are all level D, and the level D sim, which are what we are manufacturing, is a sim which is recognized at the highest level of regulation, meaning that, for example, 1 hour spent on the sim can be written in a logbook, and is the equivalent of 1 hour spent on the real aircraft. So nowadays, to increase the level of quality, because training is key, and even though you will always hear people trying to save money left and right, whether it can be on fuel, can be on the equipment, can be on a lot of materials, which can make sense sometimes, but even though cost is quite important, I think my role and my mission here is just to try to pass on the message loud and clear. It's like training is extremely important. I just would like to share with you a sentence that shared with me a couple of years ago. I had one of my boss with whom I was trying to work on a quite difficult contract was saying, you know what, if your customer has an issue with the training cost, tell him to try an accident. So that's, in a nutshell, a kind of a metaphor that I wanted to share with you. So every year, the regulation as well as C are implementing new training. So I got you through initial training and recurrent training, and we have new products such as UPRT, which is an upset prevention and recovery training, which consists of a 1-day course, 4 hours on the sim and a couple of hours on the ground school. And you know, this is something that helps you to recover from an upset maneuver with the aircraft, and something to helps you to prevent as well some uncomfortable situation that you pilots or anybody else may be going through in his career. We have PBN training, which is the new navigation a satellite that everybody has to go through nowadays, and we have a lot of products such as special airports, category 1, 2, 3, and Cat C airport that can be trained on the sim. You can easily shut down an engine on a sim, you can easily crash a sim if you like to, but at least you are in a safe environment, and this is something that I'd like to share with you today. So I'd like as well to take this quick opportunity to thank all my customers here in the room. I've recognized some faces. I want to thank you for the business. I want to thank you for your loyalty, trust, and confidence.
Great. Thank you very much. So we have a few questions for you. That was phenomenal data, by the way. Really great to see. And amazing numbers. Which of those would you like to answer first?
Well, we can take them one by one. About the UAVs, yeah, in the future, does it make sense to spend thousands learning to fly? Well, it always makes sense to spend thousands learning to fly, because again, the more scenarios you can replicate, the better it is for you to then face them up during the real situation. And then, yeah, I'm not representing today the military side of my company, but yeah, we have some UAE development, especially with the US Army, with whom we're the exclusive training supplier and providers. So this is in the pipe, and I can even tell you that some existing similar for drones are active nowadays on the market.
I think maybe the question is about, are we soon going to have pilotless planes?
You mean for the second question?
Not the first one, I think, are we going to have pilots in 50 years' time?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Say it again.
I think the question may be, are we still going to need pilots when we have autonomous vehicles? Is it worth investing now?
We will still be requiring pilots as long as you will never accept to be flown by a machine. Even yourself, for example. Would you accept being sitting on a 737 and go from one point to another just being guided by a machine? You won't. And there's a couple of studies that went through the market, and human being nowadays in 2018 is not ready yet to be flown by a machine or by a computer, even though the majority of the human factors responsible for accidents are caused by a human error. So basically, the definition would say that it could be safer to be flown by a computer, but we are not ready yet.
Okay, question number 2. Why is it so much more expensive to get type rating for a business jet?
So $45,000 for a 550 issue is a good price. It's not coming from me. So yeah, the wider aircraft should be more expensive, and this. It's everything is a question of offer and demands. That sentence works for a Coca-Cola can, but works for a simulator and works for a training as well. The more sim you have, the more demand you have, the lower is the result. Here, a G550 sim, I can count between ourselves, CE, and the competition, I can count a couple of dozens, not even more than 20. 737 simulator in the world, I think there's a couple of hundreds. So that's the reason why a 550 rating is more expensive than a 737, regardless the size of the aircraft.
And then the next one, when will simulators be able to provide full UPRT? Can you also explain what UPRT is?
Just explained it before. It's upset prevention and recovery training. This is a brand new product which is already up and running since a year now, available across the training centers. This is something new that came up from which we call modern accident. When we list, the word crash, when we list an incident or an accident on an early takeoff or on the landing mode, it's something that basically we train a lot. But when you have this new difficult environment, when you have an aircraft that soars at 35,000 feet, or when you have a brand new machine that contracts brand new problems on brand new environments, which are not expected by the everyday world nowadays, because we're all moving for new atmospheres and new environments. This is where it's coming from. And this has been especially accelerated by the AF447 Air France, Rio Paris, that has helped to have this product on the market at the fastest speed.
Okay, final question. And I think it's interesting that only a third of people in the room are worried. Where do you think all the pilots will come from?
Well, they're going to come from the market, that's for sure. I'm not concerned first. I'm more concerned by the companies. Being a pilot has always been a kind of patient for the one that are. So I just wish that we're still going to have young people that's going to be driven by the same passion, by the same doing. I'm lucky enough to spend almost 100% of my time with pilots, and they're all passionate. So let's wish for more passion to be spread around the market, and I'm sure we're gonna have these 50,000 more pilots within the next 10 years.
Brilliant.